Hi everyone and welcome to ViVoCAST, the official podcast of ViVoTech. ViVoTech are the IT team for you. No fuss, no hassle, simply making IT work for you and your business. Today I'm absolutely delighted in episode 2 to be joined by Chris Fawcett, life and business coach of Chris Fawcett Coaching. We'll be getting a real deep dive today into positivity and how it can really help drive the best you, looking at neuro-linguistic programming and a whole host of other things that could really help you bring out the best you in this time. I've worked with Chris previously and I know how effective these methods are, and hopefully it'll be really helpful to you too. So enjoy. Hi Chris, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Yeah, Gaz, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for joining us on ViVoCAST. How are you coping, all things considered, with coronavirus and whatnot?
Yeah, really good. I know it sounds a little bit funny, really, but I'm very focused at the moment, and my mindset is really strong and positive about the future. There are some negatives out there, but I'm strictly focusing on all the positive things and all the things that I can control at the moment, which is really important, as you know as well, is the things that we can focus on and that we can control are the things that we need to spend our time on and forget the rest almost.
Yeah, good. Okay, I mean, well, obviously today we're here to talk about your journey, particularly with the theme of positivity, as I've mentioned to you, and particularly in this current time, how key that is. Let's go back then right to the start for Chris Fawcett as a young lad growing up in Leeds. How can you just talk to me about your upbringing, maybe your childhood, your parents, and more around maybe student life and how that all how this journey really started out for you?
Yeah, I think the first thing to be aware of and let the listeners know is I was adopted at about 6 months old, which has had no real bearing on my life. I don't believe. I'm 30 now. I don't really feel it's had any massive effect, negative or positive, but It has given me potentially a different outlook on life. And that may become from a mindset of gratitude and gratefulness of the opportunity. My opportunity could have gone one of two ways. It could have gone a multiple of ways ultimately. But I feel that I've had the best start in life that I could have had, which has given me the opportunity to flourish and do well as a person, but also to learn the values of life, learn the values of money and how you should help people. And I think that's ultimately driven me to and pushed me in a good way to where I am today. But yeah, childhood was quite normal, really. I was taught the value of money from a young age. That I should always work for things, and if I wanted some new trainers, I wouldn't just have them bought for me. I would have to work for them or find some money or save some money to get them. Ultimately, my parents were quite good like that. They would always go halves with me or something like that. But in getting the brand new things, I was, sometimes a little bit behind because there was other things that were going on in our lives. And I think that's given me the grounding that I need ultimately to move forward.
Good. And then what about, so how did it all start for you from an academic perspective then? So you're at Woodkirk Academy, I believe. That's where you started out?
Yeah.
Like Chris Fawcett?
So I actually went to a private preparatory school, which was Wakefield Tutorial Preparatory School, which is a lot of words and a lot of words. Ultimately, I had to make a choice. My parents wanted to give me the best start in life they could with the resources that they had at that time. They felt that was the right thing for me to do. There was about 60 kids, and it was in Morley, near Morley Library. So it's quite an interesting style uniform, which is like a lollipop when you're going to and from school, which is quite interesting. But it gave me an education, and I think thinking back to the crossroads and the decisions that I made then, I got into Hetman White Grammar, which was very difficult to get in. I was one of the first on the catchment list to get a place. I wasn't offered a scholarship. I was offered a bursary at Batley Grammar, but I chose to go to Woodkirk because I wanted to go on the skiing trips. My parents couldn't afford at the time to send me to a private school and for me to go skiing. And ultimately, I made the decision that Woodkirk would be the best thing because I could go skiing. Yeah. So, it sounds funny, but I've always chosen activity, fun, and learning in that kind of aspect over the academic side as such. So yeah, the schooling and through being through childhood was really, really interesting. But I wanted to be near my friends, and I suppose from a young age I felt that if I was near my friends I could learn better and more sort of in that environment.
Sure. So that's brilliant. Then you went on to further education. I think you ended up at Liverpool University. Just talk us through that. Then what was it that you were studying, and at this point where were you? Where were you heading?
Yeah, so I mean, from 11 to 15, 16, I was a normal big overweight kid actually. I was a big lad as a teenager. Probably to put the listeners into perspective, I was about 17 stone at 13, 14.
Wow.
I weigh about just over 13 and a half now, so I've lost a few pounds since being at high school, which has been good. But yeah, it ultimately ended up at Liverpool John Moores University. Was an interesting one because I liked buildings. I loved walking around Leeds, looking at buildings, and I liked business studies. And that's the choice that I made. I put the two together and came to do a construction management degree.
Okay.
3 years advisor at Woodkirk, didn't really know what I should do. They just said, well, you could go do a bricklaying apprenticeship. So, that was the kind of advice that I got. And my parents didn't really know anything about construction either. So I just decided that that's what I would do. Made a decision and went for it. And, it was ultimately the best decision of my life. From there, one of my good friends, Dan Callery, I'd always sort of looked up to him. He's 3 or 4 years older than me. We lived opposite each other from a young age. We used to go play football. We'd been on the ski trips and various things. And I was the young kid that were getting all the pranks pulled on me because I was with the big boys. And he was going travelling. He was one of the first people I ever know to ever go to Australia, and that's what I decided. I was like, yeah, I want to go to Australia travelling, see the world, and I'd started saving around 17. So I went travelling for 5 months before I went to university, which was really, really important. I nearly didn't come back. I had an amazing time. We were working in hostels, we were doing all sorts of amazing things. And I found this love for scuba diving at that point in time. And I remember a conversation with my mum, and she said, I actually told her that I wasn't coming home. And, that in her eyes, she's like, why are you doing that? The first son in the family to go to university, you're not going to survive. So, I came home, and ultimately I'm now here today, which is a good thing. Who knows what may have happened had I not come home? But there's no point thinking about that because I came home. It's not something that I regret. It's just a decision that was made. But yeah, university was 4 years of just awesomeness. I was learning a lot of things. I was having a great time in Liverpool. The nightlife's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And I did a little bit of learning along the way as well. And ended up with a really good degree.
Win-win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so that makes sense. Obviously, construction's quite a bit away from where you are, what you've ended up doing now. So I'm really interested to hear, this what's made this transition. But so you went travelling after university to the South America, I believe.
No, so there's a little bit of a gap in there. So I did actually go to South America. There was another trip which you may be talking about there. After university, I couldn't get a job. I was really struggling. It was just I went to university just as a credit crunch hit, and then I came out just as things weren't so good either. So, I had 3 to 6 months experience and I couldn't get a job. I had a great degree. I was I thought I was enthusiastic, willing to learn, and I couldn't get a job. So I actually ended up working at Aldi down in near B&Q in Leeds. And, it's not a job that I really, really wanted, but it is a job that helped me get my first house, brand new house. And it helped me, I believe, get the interview for the role that ultimately set me up for life. So that helped me get the interview at BAM Construction because I had some experience, I had the degree, and I was earning money, and I had a role. And I think actually on reflection, it gave me the belief that I could get this job. when I went in for the interview, you know, the interview was very, very relaxed. It was 20 minutes, just chatting with the director of the company, you know, of that region. You know, it was very, very slack, in a good way, and ultimately that helped me become the engineer and stay with BAM Construction for 5 years before we did go travelling for that period of time. Yeah.
And what was that like? What was that like as an experience working for BAM Construction? Then what were the type of roles that you did? And you know, when you finished to go travelling? Apologies, my.
No, you're okay now.
Yeah, no, in terms of you know, leading up to you finishing, what have you got to? What were your sort of roles and responsibilities there?
So it was. I went in very, very naive. I'm gonna, you know, put it out there. I believe, and I'm sure I remember thinking, what is the difference between a row and a column? And it sounds daft now, but we were talking about columns and pouring concrete columns, and you know, getting confused, and that's how naive I went into this role. I actually started as an assistant site engineer, bearing in mind I hadn't done an engineering degree, on a £37 million 8-story building in Bradford. Wow. Which was quite daunting on the first day. Absolutely, yeah. You know, we were 2 stories deep. I had a tie on, and I remember my boss, it was my manager, and he said, you know, you need to take that tie off immediately. Take your hands out of your pockets and get rid of the tie. And that was the start of our relationship, which was rocky for about 9 months. You know, and if he ever listens to this, he would quite happily back me up. That, you know, we didn't get on. We didn't get on for 9 months, and until something clicked, where I think I saw the light, and I finally understood what was actually going on from an engineering perspective and how important it was. And then we were like best mates. You know, we had a really good relationship of manager and friend. And, you know, actually leading on to where I am now, he was one of the pinnacle people. You know, he once said to me, "You're too positive for this industry," which may or may not have been true. He said, "You always see the good in people." And I always said, I like to believe that people will do it. Even if it's a 99% chance that they won't, I always like to believe that they will, because if you assume they won't, there's no chance. But if you have hope and try and assume that they can and will, and you do everything in your power to help them to achieve or succeed or finish a task on time, then there is a chance that may happen. And I always went into everything I did or could do with that sort of mindset that, you know, there is a chance that we can do this. And I experienced a lot of those chances, being the engineer and being responsible for the whole coordination and setting out of a project in terms of the concrete and the steel and the positioning is very, very important. And you know, people say without the engineer there is no job, because if I wasn't there on a day-to-day basis, the job would stop. Yeah. And it's a hell of a responsibility at 23 with very little experience. So I learned a lot about the world, and there was a lot of stress involved, and I saw a lot of mental health problems, and I saw a lot of issues personally, professionally, a blend of the two, overspilling into people's professional lives, and it causes havoc with a person, and that's ultimately what's brought me to today, I believe.
Yeah, really interesting and easy to see when you mentioned it that way. The not the synergies as such, but you know, certainly the crossovers of what you've learned against what you do today. So then, apologies, that takes you back on then now to going travelling. So you have a fiance, I believe.
I do, yes. Yeah, she wasn't my fiance at the time, but yeah, Amy's now my fiance, and we got engaged shortly after returning home from travelling. So 5 years in, you know, when we met, I had a trip and a flight and a visa booked to Australia, one-way flight and visa. And I was hell-bent on going to Australia. I've been trying to get back there since I was 18. I'd been on a little 6-week trip. You know, I was going to Australia, and then Amy popped up out of nowhere for a very good reason, sort of 6 weeks after I booked the flight, I believe, something like that. So I had a big decision to make again. I've got this amazing, beautiful girl that wants to be with me. She'd just come back from living in Spain and traveling the world herself. Or I wanted to go off on my own and go to Australia. So I made the decision, stick in Leeds. There was a caveat to that deal. Not that it was a transaction. It was a deal that, you know, we would go travelling together, and you know, there's big parts of the world that we'd not seen and that we wanted to see together ultimately, and that took us to me leaving my job, and in the December of 2016, and then we went travelling to Central and South America in 2017. Yeah,
it's interesting. I don't want to jump from pillar to post, but one thing that you do speak a lot about on your social media is coincidences and spotting them and whatnot. Already, we're at the very start of your journey, so to speak, but you're already talking about these either coincidences or these things that happen for a reason. What are your thoughts on that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about coincidences anyway, but yeah, when you actually think back to times in your life when you end up at a crossroads and something, whatever it may be, a learning appears in your life, it's taking that learning and it actually, on reflection, it looks like I've learned from these coincidences that appear. There's something called the reticular activating system, which ultimately helps you attract coincidences, if you believe in them or not. But the reticular activating system, or the RAS for a shorter version abbreviation, is the magnet to the mind. So when people find themselves slipping into depression or unhappiness or stress, all they talk about is stress. I'm unhappy, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed. The mind will find more stress for them, and it will just get more stressful and more stressful. Whereas a more positive mindset, very, very simplified, is if somebody believes that they are lucky or they are happy, they will continue to be happy, and the mind will find more ways to be happy. So when you talk about luck and talk about coincidences, once we start to understand coincidences and we're more aware of them, we see more coincidences.
Yeah.
You become more coincidences. An example, if you bought a black car, a black BMW 320D, for example, there is more than one black BMW on the road, and you will see black BMWs all over the place, because the mind, that is something you're interested in, that's something that you like, you will see them. And yeah, coincidences are a very powerful force, and you can believe in them or not, but they are around us. It's just being aware of those. We see the brain takes in 10 million bits of information per second, and it actually only takes in 134, and then it distorts, deletes, and generalizes the rest of it. So we're very, very fortunate to actually be able to communicate with people, because there is so many things that we could see, we could take in. We would go insane if we were taking all that information in. So yeah, it's really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah, interesting. So sorry. So then you and your good lady decided to go traveling, and I think some of the places that you wanted to travel were around South America. Is that right?
It is, yeah. We started off in Mexico, and we as backpackers we quickly got ourselves out of Cancun. 2 days in Cancun as a backpacker with 11 or an unlimited time in front of you wasn't the place that we needed to be at that point in time. We could have spent all our year's money in Cancun in the first few days, so we quickly escaped from Cancun and worked our way through Central America, I think we spent 6 months in Central America. And when you look at the map of Central America, it's a dot compared to South America. So we did so many new things in Guatemala. We learned Spanish and we worked in bars, and we spent 3 months there, literally just having the best time. You know, mixing with the locals. We had friends, you know, from all over the place, from all over the world, where we would work. We would work in different bars, and it was incredible. But learning Spanish was one of the key things that I wasn't necessarily bothered about too much, but Amy wanted to do it, so obviously I said, right, I'll do it. We did a 60-hour course over a space of a month, whilst we were still trying to be backpackers and also work in bars. So it was quite intense, but that set us up for ultimate success. The further down the sort of Central and South America you go, the more Spanish you need to speak, and it can be a lifesaver at times. Certainly, the situations that you end up in, just by default, you need some Spanish to get you out of the situations. Yeah. Just communicating with people, getting on buses, negotiating, a deal with somebody on some accommodation or something like that. You need Spanish. So it's very, very important. But in that time, we learned to scuba dive, and
Wow.
it was incredible. Spending 2 months scuba diving every day was just, it was the best. It was 28 degrees in the water, small little island off Honduras, which actually spoke English largely. They speak a blend of Creole, Spanish, a few bits of other things that I couldn't quite pick up, and English. It used to be an English colony, and again we met friends for life there. We met friends that we've been to see in Australia since. It was incredible. So yeah, taking us down the coast. Wow, we entered into Colombia. Colombia is one of the best countries I've ever been to. I can't explain why. I don't know why. Everyone I've met that loved Colombia can't explain why Colombia is the best. It's so diverse. It's just incredible, and the people are blown away that you're there. Actually, there's just something about the people there. But yeah, really, Peru was the start of our new life, I would say. On reflection.
Okay, so Peru. I think doing my research on yourself, because I think Peru really stands out on your page, if you like, as a defining moment for what I'd consider from A to B. Do you want to talk us through what happened in Peru, your experiences there, and how that helped shape the Chris Fawcett for today?
Yeah, definitely. When we were actually there, Peru wasn't our favourite place because we'd just come from Colombia and we were blown away by Colombia. There were two very different countries, different trips, effectively. We spent 7 to 8 weeks in Colombia, and it was incredible. But when we got to Peru, there was a lot more tourists, there was a lot more English spoken, and we were getting into speaking Spanish, and we were getting into the local side of things. However, Peru has some amazing history in terms of the Incas, the Mayans. It's incredible, and maybe we took it for advantage at certain aspects at that point. We'd been away 7-8 months. We'd seen many mountains. I'd actually hiked the Machu Picchu before, and I'd done the Inca Trail.
Oh.
But we did a different trip, and we ended up spending 18 days in Cusco, which is around, I think it used to be one of the highest cities in the world at some point. It's about 3,300 meters above sea level. So you need to be quite accustomed to you need to be acclimatized to the sea level, because it's quite hard of breathing, shall we say. And we'd done a few little trips, and there was a turning point where myself and my fiance, there was something that she wanted to get off her chest, and she wanted to deal with from her past. Now, I did a little bit of research, and I'd heard of ayahuasca, which is a plant medicine, which is quite intense. They call it the death plant, which ultimately takes you to a higher consciousness. Instead of not going into too much detail, but it's very, very intense, and it changes people for the better. But it's a really intense process where people go on a retreat for this. So I found something called San Pedro, which is a plant medicine, and they call it the grandfather. It's very light-hearted. It's very soft. It's not an hallucinogenic plant medicine. Now, in Peru, they've been using plant medicines over 4,000 years. This is what they go. It's their go-to thing for healing, internal healing, and various things. And we booked this ceremony with a shaman, and we went to a place called Sacred Valley, which is one of the most magnetic points of Peru, and in the world, I believe, as well. It's very, very magnetic. They talk about the energies in Peru and the Pachamama, which is the Mother Earth in English. And we had this experience, and it was magical for me. It wasn't so magical for her. And ultimately, it opens the heart to the feelings and just life and enjoying life. And it helps you almost deal with scenarios that have in the past, little niggles maybe that have been holding you back. It's actually very, very similar to timeline therapy, which is something that I use within my coaching and NLP for therapy. And I actually thought about this experience as like as a train track and like a filing cabinet of just dealing with all the little things that have niggled me over the years. And ultimately, I came to the end of this experience, and this triangle, the only visual experience I got from it was this love, health, and happiness, which was something that at the time I was like, oh, okay. But the more I think about it and the more I talk about it, the more powerful it becomes almost. And the plant medicine I feel was guiding me for a number of weeks. Whenever I was in the sun, I would tingle. My skin would tingle. I'd been in the sun for months. It wouldn't do that. And every decision I made, I felt like there was something helping me make that decision or make the right decision for a number of weeks after, which is crazy when you've just drank some green juice from a plant, effectively. So it's very, very powerful stuff. And would I recommend it to everyone? Not to everyone, but I think there's a lot of people that could benefit from an experience like that. It's really, really powerful. And that the subsequent days and weeks after that, I think, looking back again, changed my life, because they were the weeks and days after that we were spending in a hostel with shamans, psychics, shamanic healers, spiritual healers, and there was a number of life coaches that stayed there. And at that point in time, I didn't know what a life coach was. So I had no idea. I just thought this is madness. What are people doing? We spoke to one guy and he said, "Oh, I'm helping people while I travel," and I just couldn't understand it. So it's quite a shift. It really is.
Did you? So when you were traveling, did you have any intentions of going to any of these things, or was it literally just something that you sort of stumbled upon? Again, I'm just thinking back to the coincidences piece that you mentioned. How did it come about? Was it something that was always going to happen, or was it something that that you stumbled across?
That's a good question. I was aware of ayahuasca, and I wasn't aware of San Pedro because I'd been to Peru before. I went on a trip with 9 friends. My friend had a business out there. He imports finger puppets, and we'd been to see all the people that worked for him effectively and have a party with them, which was a whole new another interesting story. But we'd not planned to do it. It wasn't planned at all. It was something that came up in conversation, and I started doing a little bit of research. Obviously, I had nothing but time on my hands. I wasn't working as such at that point. Well, I wasn't working, and my fiance was. So I spent a little bit of time, just a couple of hours a day, just searching things, browsing, and I came across this San Pedro, which seemed like the right thing to do. Now, the first time that we did it, she didn't have a very good experience, so I talked her into doing another one, and that was subsequently where we met all these people from this hostel. So had she not said yes, we would never have gone to this hostel, and we spent over a week there, and learning and just sitting. I was sat. It sounds so funny, but I was sat reading, and there was a psychic to the right of me, and there was a shaman to the right of me, and their spirits were talking to each other. They were sat there talking, and their spirits were sat there talking in the same room. I'm just reading a book, and it was just it was so interesting. I was just sat there thinking, is this really happening? Was I a little bit skeptical? I probably was, and would I think the same now? I'd probably think something slightly different. I would believe it more. And it was really, really interesting to just sit time and just read and just take things in. And I think that was one of the big things there, was spending time in that hostel. Yeah.
So the travel ends and you come back to the UK with Amy. What happens next then? So obviously you've had this experience. You've started, I'm guessing at this point, you've started thinking about different directions in life. Had you at this point, or was it just a case of it's nice to travel, we're off back to the UK to get back to the grind?
Yeah, we were actually planning on going to Australia. Now that didn't it didn't transpire. Amy fell off the road, off the mountain bike in Bolivia, so our trip was cut short. So in around October, we booked flights home from Rio. So we were booked to go to Rio Carnival, and she fell off the bike. And it's Camino del Muerte, which is Death Road in Bolivia. So that was an interesting couple of weeks where we were visiting hospital every day to get a leg drained from a blood clot in a leg or something like that. So the reason we decided to come home was because we couldn't continue travelling effectively, really. Argentina and Chile are very, very expensive countries, probably around the same as London, if not more expensive. And money was starting to run out to an extent, but she couldn't go hiking, she couldn't walk properly, so we came home. At that point, I had no real thoughts about doing anything else. I just I wanted to get a job back at either at BAM, or I actually ended up working with a friend, Ryan Geldard, who he was working as head of operations at a modular contractor in Hull. We had a chat, and he said, I was in Chile at the time. I was on our last night in Chile. We booked a really nice hotel, and we'd met some friends that we'd travelled with for a little while. And I was offered a job, a car, a phone, and, down in London. So it all works out. Life is always working for you. So I came home on day one for being home. I literally got everything sorted for me, which was fantastic. So no, I had no real plans of doing anything different. I had ideas of going freelance and sort of having my own business, because I knew that I could earn more money doing that way.
Yeah.
But nothing different. No.
Okay, so you're back in London. You've got your job, and I think again, me looking at your page, another, when I look at your story that I've seen written out for me, I guess I see a couple of real pivotal points, and I think 2018, leading up to Christmas 2018, was a big time for you in terms of change. But just before that, really, what you got all this travel back to and from London. Just talk me through, your thought process and this transition that starts then. And you've talked heavily in a lot of your other social media content about influencers that have also guided you to where you are today. So maybe just touch on those for us a little bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. 2018 was really, really, really interesting. We felt like we came back from traveling. We got our own apartment down in London, which was great. So we felt like tourists still. I'd seen my parents, for Christmas and various things, but not really. We'd not seen our friends to us, every week. So we were still on, traveling mode. I wasn't paying any rent for accommodation. We were just out in London having a great time, just whilst getting paid. It was the dream.
Yeah.
But as we got back, my dad had been ill for a number of years. And in sort of the April, May, as I was finishing a project, he started to deteriorate a little bit and ended up in hospital for a period of time, which I don't actually think he got. I don't know whether it came out or not. I can't remember now. I don't know whether it actually properly came out. He tried a couple of times, but it never really worked. So in that time, my dad was failing ultimately, and we felt that the best thing to do was to be at home. But I just said I would work down in Devon for a project. So in June we went down to Devon. Subsequently, it was a great time because the project got put back. We had a really nice apartment, and it was the hottest summer England's ever seen. So again, we were still on holiday. So I was working I was working harder than ever in terms of being on the laptop. I got a fantastic tan, and we got to see parts of Devon that we would probably never see.
Yeah.
But this was all happening as my mum was really struggling, and it was a really tough time. We were doing a lot of miles. The idea was that I would work away. Bearing in mind it's a 660-mile round trip from Plymouth to Leeds.
Yeah.
Coming back every week wasn't part of the deal. I ended up coming back quite often, and in the end we had to come back in September, and that was August, and that was ultimately it. So it was really, really difficult. It was a difficult part of the year where I was trying to do the best and help my mum, but also live in Devon, which I'd said that I would do. So really interesting point, and there was a pivotal point where my boss, again Ryan, said, "Why don't you come back in the office now?" I'd never worked in an office environment, really, in a professional sense. I'd always been on sites. I'd always worked in, cabins to a point where I'd had an office, but not in a, static office.
Office, yeah.
Yeah, and it was an interesting period. I was learning a lot of new things. I was getting involved in things that I had no experience in from a pre-construction perspective, designing, estimating, pricing jobs, and just delving into new things, which at the time was stressful. It was difficult. It was torment at times, but it taught me so much about who I am, and it gave me a lot of time to think whilst I was driving to Hull and back and driving to London, because it gave me time to spend listening to audios in the car, which took me a few months to get to that point. I must admit I'd had an aux lead and I'd had Bluetooth media in my old car, but I just forgot, so I was listening to the radio a lot. And again, Amy said, "Why don't you get a lead for your car?" Oh yeah, good idea. I was doing like 30,000 miles a year, 35,000 miles a year, so a lot of miles. And she said, and I think this was my idea, but she still claims that she told me about listening to Tony Robbins. So straight on the company phone, boom, Tony Robbins, and I just started listening, and I was just engrossed. You know, I was.
Just for those who don't know who Tony Robbins is, can you tell us a bit about Tony Robbins?
Yeah, so he is the world's renowned, world best life and business strategist, philanthropist, business owner. You know, I think he owns 50 odd businesses now. He's incredible. He's changed. I think he's worked with over 100 million people across over 100 countries. So he's incredible, and he's got something on Netflix called I Am Not Your Guru, which is an event that we're actually booked to go to in Florida in December this year, and which is called Date with Destiny. We've been to a seminar with him, and I'm actually being coached by his company at the moment, which is I felt proximity is power, as he says, and I thought if I want to work with him, meet the guy, I'm going to get coached by his company, and it's going to get me one step closer. But his work and his audios on YouTube are absolutely incredible. You know, there's so many things from his meditations, guided meditations that he does, to, you know, the seminars, the 50-hour-long seminars and 60, 70-hour-long seminars that he does. It's all so engrossing.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in the car listening to Tony Robbins, and this is what sort of guides you onto further things. What was the moment for you, or what was it that built up that led you to coaching them, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's a few moments. I remember spending a good couple of months listening to various people. Earl Nightingale from the 50s, Jim Rohn 70s, the Napoleon Hill that wrote Think and Grow Rich in the 1930s. You know, these are all the sort of Dean Earl Nightingale was the Dean of Personal Development. You know, he said it very, very clearly in a book called The Strangest Secret, and it's on an audio as well. You can get that on YouTube. And it's people don't know what they want, ultimately. And I spent a lot of time thinking, you know, do I know what I want, and do I have the hunger? I couldn't figure it out what I needed to do. I knew what I was doing wasn't right, and it wasn't forever, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Until one night, I'd been for a curry with my old boss, who, you know, we didn't get used to get on, and another couple of guys. And say it was like 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. I was up very early in the morning for a flight to Ireland, and he asked me a very driven, short question: is what do you want from next year, 2019, that being? And I just froze. I couldn't give him an answer. I didn't know what to say. I just had nothing. And I'm very rarely short for words. So for me, not to be able to say anything was quite a moment. And I sat there thinking, and something clicked in me. You know, the cogs, some new part of the brain opened up, and the cogs started working. And sort of 3 weeks after that, we were going to Australia for 5 weeks. So, which I was very fortunate to get the time off. And we flew on Boxing Day, and there's a photo you may have seen, and I'm in the airport, and I've got a bottle of water, and I've got about 5 personal development books, and I was in Dover Airport, and I had this big smile on my face, and Amy took it, and she's like, you know, how times have changed, you know, and I was in W.H. Smith's buying books, and I read through this first book, and I was just amazed, and I just felt compelled to write, and I spent literally the whole 5 weeks, while ever Amy was working, she was building her business at that point in time. So it wasn't really it wasn't an ideal time for the trip, because we were completing on a house. She had just launched her business, spent a lot of money on her personal development, and we were buying a house literally as we were away. So going to Australia for 5 weeks wasn't ideal. However,
you did
changing. It was the best thing we could have done, because it gave me time to think. And there was a very special moment of sat having a glass of wine in Melbourne, just looking out to sea, where it came to me that this is what I need to do, and that was to ultimately become a coach and help people on a larger scale.
So I think, you know, for anyone listening, I think there's lots of people that will find themselves in that predicament where, you know, what do I want to do with myself, and there'll be lots of people that'll be in that position. Looking back now, Chris, is there any sort of hints, tips, advice, or anything that you'd give for people looking for that answer? Is it a case of, I think you've just mentioned there that you needed time to sit and think. Do you think it's a case of people getting caught up in day-to-day life and not giving themselves the opportunity? What do you think that people could do more if they're sat in a position thinking, listening to this now, thinking, what do I want to do?
I think it is. I think, for the average man and woman, we get a job, and that's what we're taught to do from school. School teaches you to get a safe job. I've nothing against schools, but it teaches you to get a safe job, and it doesn't teach you to put yourself out there, and go be the entrepreneur. And we get bogged down in doing 50, 60 hours a week, whatever people work, may have children, may have things going on out of our control that are negatively affecting us. And ultimately, that doesn't leave us a lot of time for ourselves to think, what do we want? And I remember, I was setting off. I was up early. I was trying to get some weight off for the trip. I was up early. I was out the door at 7, and I was getting in at 7, 8 o'clock at night. And that didn't help my home life. But what I was doing was maximising the time while I was in the car.
Yeah.
Because I was spending 2, 3, 4, 5. If I was driving to London, I had 6, 7 hours in the car to learn. And every hour I did, that was an hour more than somebody else. And it's giving yourself some space. I went to Australia for that space because I couldn't do it here. Just I didn't have the capacity. I didn't have that on. On Saturday and Sundays, I might have been working, or I just didn't have that free time. But if you can give yourself a little bit of space and just ask yourself a couple of questions: what do I want from life? Who do I want to become? And why do I want it? And if you can answer those 3 questions comfortably, then you're doing okay. But a lot of people can't, and as I know, I couldn't answer that question. And I was already listening to things. I was already planning stuff, and I couldn't confidently answer it. So key things are reading books, meditating. It doesn't have to be sat there with your legs crossed in this this position. I do yoga. I've been doing yoga 8 months, and I still can't sit in the easiest pose they call it, which is sit comfortably. I can't do it. It's not as comfortable as it could be for me. So I have to do something else. So just sitting in a park for 10, 15 minutes and listening to the trees waft and listening to the wildlife, or things running about, that's meditation.
And I think that's a very interesting point that you make, Chris. We've obviously spoke in our own sessions, and I think certainly my take on meditation was probably what a lot of people think, which is sat in an awkward position, humming, and actually it couldn't be further from the truth. I think my take on it now is that meditation is a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think that's what I've learned, really. So, I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think meditation, I don't know what the technical term is, but meditation is taking time for yourself. That is what I would describe it as.
Yeah.
It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. If it's listening to something, just taking some time to just close your eyes. I mean, closing your eyes is a good thing because it helps you close out the senses so you can concentrate on other things more. So if you're listening to something and you close your eyes, you can concentrate on the sound more because you've got more brain power focusing on that. So yeah, if it's sitting, if it's kneeling down, if it's laying down, if it's going for a walk, and I feel very, very relaxed at the top of a mountain. I have this nice feeling, I suppose, at the top of a mountain, and that's that could be a meditative state. If I sat there and just appreciated the sight and and the views, could be meditation. Listening to a guided meditation is really, really good. People do it on a night. I do it on a morning. I do something called priming, which is a 15-20 minute exercise where you do some breathing techniques and then you think about the things that you're grateful for, do some sort of energy healing, and then you think about the goals that you want to have achieved, and it's putting them in the forefront of your mind for the day and programming your mind to believe that it's already happened. So
yeah, I mean, look, when you answer questions on this, it's evident that your drive is around helping people and wanting people to prosper, really. So take us on to then the start of Chris Fawcett coaching. Do you want to give us a little bit on Chris Fawcett coaching first? Who are you? What do you do? And how is it that you like to help people, Chris?
Yeah. Thank you. So, as I say, I started off in a construction background. and my initial idea was to help the construction industry from a coaching perspective. I started off as a peak performance coach, and it didn't work. People didn't know what a peak performance coach was. You had to explain yourself. So I stripped it back. I thought, right, who am I? Who do I help best? And it turns out I largely help individuals, company directors, not necessarily always business owners, but take control of their life. And that could be life and business, life and career, by helping people master their mindset, understand what they want and why, and then put a very, very clear plan in place to get there. So it's really helping people understand who they are, and where they are and where they want to be. And there's generally a gap. The gap could be 5 millimeters, it could be 50 millimeters, it could be 20 meters. But it's helping people understand why they might want to get there, and then help them get there. And whether that's through coaching, whether that's through a workshop, whether that's through a transformation day, whether that's helping them release any of these limiting beliefs and these blocks and these emotions that are potentially holding them back. It's almost like somebody's got hold of you, and they're pulling you back when there's certain things, certain limiting beliefs that we've had ingrained in us and conditioned in us through our life, that you will never get there because there's always something stopping you. And that's very, very powerful. And that's the tools with NLP, neuro linguistic programming, that I can help people with.
Yeah, no, and obviously we've spoken separately to this, and I can absolutely vouch for that. I think one of the things that anybody listening to this would absolutely hear very clearly is the positivity that you speak with. One of the things I've learned with working with you is about language. Just maybe touch on that. I think people will understand that you talk very positively. It's sort of I can, I will, etc., etc. But do you want to talk for a second about the positivity of language that we use, and how that can affect us?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, positivity gets thrown about. It gets a lot of attention, and having a positive mindset is extremely important, because it will allow us, and it will provide us the energy to go get things, to go do things, to go achieve things, to go help somebody. If we were negative, we wouldn't do anything. We would sit in our chair and watch TV, and that would be it, because we wouldn't have any drive to do anything. Where positivity helps us, it gives us the enthusiasm, and it gives us that creativity and that sort of desire to want things and to be happy. Yeah. It opens our mind up to what we can do and what we can achieve, and with having a positive mindset, but also looking at things practically. Tony Robbins says that you could go outside and say there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, but unless you put some weed killer on, you're going to get weeds. Yeah. So what and you'll know this from us talking is understanding what you want and being very, very positive about it, but understanding where you are. And the key is to figuring out where you are, and then how do you get from where you are to where you want to go. Journey. And that's the journey, and the journey is the best bit, because the journey is the fun, the journey is the twists and turns, the learnings, the failures. Everything about the journey is life, isn't it? Yeah. It's very, very important.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll put Chris's details in the description. So if you don't want to get in touch with Chris around coaching, I'd certainly recommend it as somebody who's started the process with me and the members of my team within my business. But the other big thing that's coming up, Chris, is obviously Mental Health Awareness Week in May. I know that's something that you're not only passionate about, but it's obviously very linked with you helping people and talking people through certain things. I know you've got a fantastic project coming up in May for Mental Health Awareness Week. Do you want to just tell us a bit about this new exciting project that you've got going on?
Yeah, so this, again, coincidences, going back to coincidences, this came out of nowhere. It came from something, but it came out of nowhere from having a walk around the reservoir with my fiance, just reflecting on life, looking at the sun, appreciating the sunset. And since the coronavirus has been quite popular, shall we say, and that's just touching on language again, and the language that we use with ourselves. And it's very, very important to be aware of the language with ourselves, but I'll come back to that. So the Virtual Mental Health Awareness Week, coronavirus has taken over the world, and a lot of businesses are closed, a lot are shut down, a lot of businesses are learning new ways to work. Social distancing, the new rules that may come out we're all gonna learn a lot about ourselves and how businesses work. And ultimately, the Mental Health Awareness Week in May the 18th was planned. I had some workshops booked in, which were postponed and cancelled. And it left me thinking, well, all these people that are at home, potentially furloughed, potentially unemployed, there's 30 million people in the States unemployed now. 30 million. I don't know what percentage. I think there's about 270 million in America. So it's, I don't think that the numbers are as bad here, but there's a lot of people that have a lot of uncertainty in their lives at the moment, which potentially cause anxiety, stress, unhappiness, unease, relationship issues. I know there's been a lot of domestic violence. That all leads one way. That's not going in a good direction, unfortunately. And I took it upon myself to create the Virtual Mental Health Awareness Week, which is a week I'm putting on with a couple of people, actually. One of those is Lorna Feeney. She's the head of mental health at a large worldwide company. So myself and her have got very, very different experience in what we do, but we both have an inherent trait that we want to help people. So between myself and Lorna, we're going to be presenting through the week on various different things on stress, anxiety, returning to work, and it's all free, it's all online, and it's all going to be through Zoom. So the aim is, I'm putting it out there to the world, is I want to be on the news, whether it's Look North or ITV News in Yorkshire, promoting the Virtual Mental Health Awareness Week, whether it's through a virtual way or getting on there and getting this out there to as many people as we can. So I think you're going to provide the link, aren't you, for that?
I am, yeah, that'll be in the description.
The link, there's an explanation as to what it will be, why I'm doing it, and ultimately it allows people to apply. I would love for you to share the link. It's on Facebook as well. If you search Virtual Mental Health Awareness Week on Facebook, there's a Facebook page, and it would make me really, really happy for as many people to attend as we can possibly get there that may be struggling. They may just want a little boost of positivity. And we're going to be sharing all sorts of tips from, how to overcome stress, how to prevent anxiety, but then also how to improve your health, how to improve your learning, your positivity, how to improve everything around it. So we're going to make people aware of the issues that it can cause if you don't look after it, but then also give you lots of tips and strategies and tricks to then improve it yourself. So it'll be a key week on building and maintaining strong mental health.
No, that's amazing. It really is. And congratulations and well done for doing it, because it's I'm sure you can help a lot of people that'll need that. So well done, Paul. I think finally then, Chris, just before we go, I think obviously coronavirus is something that's very topical at the moment. A lot of people are sick of talking about it now, but it's something that's very real now. If you could give a couple of tips, let's say three tips to keeping positive, I guess, or making a difference within, or getting up and doing something within coronavirus, what would it be based on what you see with your clients?
So there's something that just came to me now. There's something very interesting from a gentleman called Eckhart Tolle, which wrote The Power of Now, and it's effectively a flowchart for anyone who's not watching but listening. And the first question is, do you have a problem? And if the answer is no to that question, then why worry? Second question is, do you have a problem? And if the answer is yes, the next section is, can you do anything about it? Yes, then why worry? Have you got a problem? Yes. Can you do anything about it? No, then why worry? So there is no reason to ever worry, because if we can do something about something, we're in control.
Do it.
If we can't do anything about it, then it's pointless worrying about it. And I know that's very, very direct and to the point, but tip number one, and it would be the ultimate tip, is do a list of the things that we are in control of, and do a list of the things that we're in control of, and then just completely scribble out the things that we're not in control of, and focus solely on the things that we are in control of. We are in control of what we eat. We are in control of what we drink. We're in control of what we read, what we don't read, what we watch, what we listen to, what we say, how we act. we're in control of absolutely everything about us in a much of the form. We're not in control of the weather. We can't do anything about that. We're not in control of what gets put on the news. We're not in control of what the government does or doesn't say. So, it's again, it sounds a little bit brutal, but it's pointless spending time worrying about it because it will happen either way. So
Sure.
we focus on building resilience and strength, mental strength and physical strength up within us. It allows us to be able to overcome whatever gets put on the news or whatever gets said to you or whatever may happen to your business. Because if you've got all your psychology right and your physiology right and your health and your mental strength right, if your business goes under, you're in a position to be able to say, right, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do instead, not fall down with it. So that would be number one. That would be number one, but everything encompassing in it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So yeah, it's a good point to make a list and start acting on what you can control and don't worry about what you can't. Good advice. Chris, look, that's been really, really good. I've certainly taken lots from that. As I said, there will be links to the literature that Chris has mentioned today, along with the Mental Health Awareness Week and information to get in touch with Chris if you need to. But Chris, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, and just once again, if anyone can help with the virtual Mental Health Awareness Week, share it to somebody who may need it. Share it to an elderly. Share it to a friend. Please come along. It's going to be absolutely amazing. As I said, it's all free. It's something that I want to do to give back and get as many people involved as possible. I want it to be the biggest Zoom meeting that we can find. I can have 1,000 people on, so let's get over 1,000 people involved. So yeah, thank you, ViVoTech and ViVoCAST, and I will see you soon.
You're welcome. Good to speak to you, pal. Take care.
Thank you.